Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dumb Talks. I'm your host, Dan Mitchem. Today, I'm talking to Kohl. What's up, Kohl?
Hey, how's everyone doing?
I don't know. They haven't responded yet or anything, but I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing the best I can during these times.
Well, that's good. Today, we're going to be talking about filmmaking. What inspired you to want to make films and when?
I actually grew up on backlots going to work with my dad. What actually got me into horror was he worked on the first, I think, season or two of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh,
Being like 8 years old, I think I was 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, and just being around all these really cool vampires who obviously they saw that I was a kid and they didn't want to scare me, so they were being super friendly, and I thought they were, I thought in my brain, I thought they were my friends. That's just kind of where it all took off, and then he worked on Scream 3, and I got to see how they do their death scenes, and then from there I just started diving in and watching horror movies. And it was actually after watching Psycho, I was like, you know what? That's exactly what I want to do. I want to do that.
yeah.
That's kind of where it all started.
What did your dad do? Same thing?
He works in transportation, so he's called a teamster. He basically all of the equipment that it takes to make a movie, like the lights, the cameras, all of the construction, the costumes, and even the actors. That's how they get everything to set is on the back of trucks and trailers and everything. And then basically I'd just go to work with him and just basically like a kid in a candy store, I would just kind of run around and hang out with the sound department for a day or hang out in the makeup trailer, and I just kind of figured out what I wanted to do.
No, that sounds awesome. My equivalent was my mom worked at a carpet store, and then later she worked at a TV station, like a news station. So, I mean, carpet store was kind of boring, I'm not going to lie. But the TV station was kind of cool just to see how the inner workings work and everything. But I can't imagine being able to go on a friggin' backlot all the time. That must be awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. That's how I spent all of my spring and summer breaks, was doing that. And then when he worked on Evolution, which was a comedy with Sean William Scott and Orlando Jones, I don't know if you've seen it.
I love that movie.
Yeah, they filmed it in a small town in Arizona. He actually pulled me out of school for a whole month, and I just basically spent every day. I don't even think I did any of my homework I was supposed to. I just spent every day on set for a month straight. It was so cool. And I actually got to be an extra in the scene where the bird alien was flying through the mall. I was one of the kids running running away from the bird alien, so that was kind of fun.
That's so funny because when you asked if I had heard of the movie, I was going to quote that line where he's like, "Caca, caca, tuki, tuki."
Yeah, it was pretty funny to watch film, and it's fascinating to like think about like where I was standing when they were filming those, like watching the movie and be like, oh my god, I was just 3 feet to the right of that, where they're standing or whatever. It's such a cool memory to look back on and whatnot.
Yeah. Now, with other movies and you being in the backlot and everything, were there any that you were able to like kind of sneak on and be an extra for? Did you ever try anything like that? I mean,
That was the only one that I did it. Oh, you know what? I actually did sneak into one. He was working on Old School with Will Ferrell and Vince Vaughn.
yeah.
And there's a scene where it's like the exterior of like the party. There's like a big party house scene in the movie.
Yeah.
I was standing on an apple box in one of the windows holding a fake beer bottle as one of the party people as like a shadow.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun,
Nice. So you're in two awesome movies.
I guess.
So you've done some filmmaking. Most of your filmmaking, though, is horror. Is that correct?
Yes, the horror genre, it just has me. I've had thoughts of expanding my horizons, and every time I do, I start writing something, and then part of me wants to start adding in murders or whatever, and I just feel like horror is just kind of where I'm at. But my style of filmmaking or storytelling, rather, is more, I like telling dramas with
Yeah.
horror elements. So you really get to know the characters. All of my stories are very character driven. You introduce like everybody from their life. You get to meet their parents, and you kind of get to see their home life, and you really get to explore their world before they become in danger of anything, which is kind of unique. And that's one reason why I'm hoping that I eventually break through into actually making something big, because I feel like I would approach the horror genre in a completely different way that I don't think's really been approached yet.
Oh, okay. Do you wanna tell us some of the things that you have done?
Sure. I mean, I haven't done anything super amazing or anything.
You say that now.
I did a fan film for Halloween, which ended up getting shut down. The idea that I had going into that film was my brother used to be in a hard rock screamo band
Okay.
back in like the 2006 through 2010, back when the whole emo thing was a huge thing at that point. And they did a cover of Bad Romance by Lady Gaga, which she actually took to the radio station and had them play it on the radio. And that's kind of how they exploded and started touring, and they had merch and Hot Topic and all sorts of stuff. So the idea just kind of came to me. I was like, okay, why don't I do a cover of a movie and see if I can possibly get noticed through doing that? I had met Tony Moran on the back lot of Fox Studios. He was working on something there, and we happened to run into each other. And I didn't really know what he looked like because I'd only ever seen Halloween. And it's the part where in the original Halloween, when the mask is removed at the
Yeah.
very end, or Loomis shoots him. That's Tony Moran. Everything else is Nick Castle in the movie when he's moving through the sets and stalking Laurie. But anyways, he saw my Michael Myers tattoo and he's like, "Hey, you got my face on your arm." And it just kind of got a conversation going. And I explained to him how Halloween was one of my big inspirations as a filmmaker. And I told him about like my style of filmmaking and storytelling and whatnot. And we exchanged information. He said if I ever had anything, to just kind of toss it his way.
Nice.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and do this movie, but only if I can get Tony Moran to play Michael Myers again. I wrote the script and everything. I sent it to him and I said, give it a read. If you have questions or whatever. And he read it and he's like, let's do this. So at that time, I ended up inheriting a house from a relative who had passed. It was split between me and a few other relatives from my generation, my brother and a few cousins.
Yeah.
Looking at it now, stupidly, I took all of that money and I made Halloween the Night Evil Died, which was the fan film. The only reason I say stupidly is because about 20 days into production, because the new Halloween 2018 they just announced it,
Yeah.
they got in contact with me and shut down my production because everyone thought the film I was making was their movie,
Oh, geez.
even though we started production before they even announced their film. But they said because we have Tony Moran and we're having original music scored and we had masks made for it and we were approaching it as a legitimate production, they're like, this is way too real. We appreciate people usually make fan films. It's fun to see them do their own takes on what Michael Myers would do or whatever. But they're like, but your situation is so beyond that.
Yeah.
What's funny is I was like, I'd been wanting to see a new Halloween movie for years, and I said, I guess it took me $30,000 for
Yeah.
that to finally make a new one. And for a while I was pretty bummed out when they sent me the cease and desist, and I got pretty upset, obviously, because we were making such a pretty badass film.
Yeah.
I'm not going to see the new movie, and then of course I ended up seeing it. But besides the fact, I will say that I made a lot of contacts through it. It was almost like paying for another semester of film school because
Yeah.
I was actually doing everything firsthand. I was paying actors and paying the makeup department. So I was actually doing a legitimate thing, not just shooting something in my backyard, which, is what I used to do.
And that you should actually take that as a compliment for them to tell you that you need to cease and desist because the quality and everything was so good, It wasn't just a little student film in your backyard or anything.
That's when I actually stopped being so upset about it, is when somebody told me that same thing and I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And there was a lot of people that were saying you should just keep going. What are they going to do? It's not like you're going to sell it. They can't do anything to you. And I was like, yeah, I know, but me looking ahead at what a career I can possibly have, and I mean Universal being one of the big names on there and Miramax and whatnot, this would be such a bad move on my part to just basically give them the middle finger and keep doing it.
Yeah.
And if that put a bad mark on my name down the road, I was like, I wasn't prideful and I just went quietly. So now There's $30,000 worth of footage on a hard drive that just basically sits in my closet, and every once in a while I find it and feel bad about myself, but it's all good.
Well, and just because it's in there collecting dust doesn't mean it forever will. I mean, you never know if you can kind of try to negotiate with these companies and see if there's a way to rekindle that project.
Yeah. I started writing a feature which we did a proof of concept is for a film called Hollowell. It's a horror film, slasher film with a predominantly black cast that's very seriously.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty pretty brutal. I was doing new things with the killer that I'd never really seen in a movie because that's kind of what I always try to do. I don't try to be like, okay, I'm going to just basically do a copycat of this. I try to say like, okay, what can I do that's new? What can I do that's fresh that people aren't going to roll their eyes and be like, oh, okay, I've seen this 100 times, you know?
Yeah.
I pieced Hollowell together. We did the proof of concept and shot it and whatnot. And then in July, I actually assembled a team. It was myself and a cinematographer and then a cast of 7. And then we basically all quarantined as a group and went up to Lake Arrowhead and shot a film, which is a full feature. We spent a little over a week up there shooting hours on end.
Yeah.
What else were we going to do, you know? So everybody was happy to be there. And it was kind of fun because when we would be done shooting at night, we'd play beer pong or play games or whatever and kind of just make a little mini vacation out of it.
Hey, there you go.
So that's being cut together right now. I'm actually excited because right now we're kind of in a renaissance where bigger studios are looking to independent filmmakers. They have something good enough that they could slap their name on, get distributed online or in movie theaters that are open. I'm kind of excited to be taking advantage of this situation and hopefully, which I do have a few contacts with studios who would be interested in something like this. So as soon as this is done, this will hopefully be my foot in the door where I can then say, hey, I also have Hollowell with a predominantly black cast. It's just, I'm always trying to look at ways of getting everybody involved and making films that have gay characters and whatnot, where typically you don't see that in a horror movie.
Yeah.
I'm all about equal opportunity and whatnot. I mean, being part of the gay community myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. I first met you at Halloween Horror Nights. We did we did Halloween Horror Nights. Why else would we be there? But we were actors in the haunted houses, if you will, over there and stuff.
Yes.
Do you want to act in films or do you only want to do filmmaking?
Oh, so that's such a tricky question. I love acting. I actually did some plays or musicals in high school. I love stage acting because what you're doing in that current moment, you're throwing something at an audience and then they're giving you feedback whether you're doing a good job or you suck. Either way you're getting feedback of some kind and I love that feeling. It's almost like an adrenaline rush, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Good friend Jeffrey of mine, he shot an independent feature a few years back called Hadron, and he actually texted me and said, just out of the blue, and was like, "Hey, do you want to be the lead in my movie?" And I texted him back. I said, "I think you texted the wrong person." He's like, "No, this is cool. I'm reaching out to you specifically." And I said, "Okay, well, I ended up doing it, and I hated every moment of it because I hate being on camera."
Okay. So you're mostly theater then.
Yeah, so I would act tomorrow if I could get cast in a physical production stage. But
Yeah.
as far as directing goes, I like to stick to my writing and directing for film and whatnot.
Here's just a random thought I had because I kind of want to do something like this for things that I film and stuff. Like Alfred Hitchcock, he always puts himself in his movies. A few other directors and stuff, they always put something in there just as like a little Easter egg. Has that ever crossed your mind to do something like that just for shits and giggles to put in your movies?
I mean, if you want to talk about Easter eggs, anytime there's a male scream in this podcast that I do called Thrillergram, which I know we said we'd talk about on a different day,
Yeah.
whenever there's a male character where they're getting attacked or whatever the situation is, the scream that we use in Thrillergram for the male actors is always my scream. So that's kind of like my Easter egg, I guess you could say, of putting myself something that I've done. The very first short film that I ever shot, which was in Pasadena, which was I think a year after I moved to Los Angeles. because I lived in Colorado for a few years. After middle school through college years, I lived in Colorado, and then I moved out here in 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, I shot something about a year after moving here in Pasadena for 2 weeks. I shot a little short film, and we couldn't find anybody to play the ticket stand person at a movie theater because we rented out one of the movie theaters in Pasadena for it. My producer Christina said, "Why don't you just play the ticket person?" And I was like, "I'd rather not." And she's like, "I don't know who else we're gonna find." So I ended up doing that, and it's so cheesy because you could tell I'm uncomfortable because I'm smiling the whole time and whatnot. But anyway, it was what it was. And maybe down the road I'll do something a little more like Hitchcock, where in one scene you'll see me crossing the road in the background, or you'll see my back as I'm exiting a door, or something where I'm not completely the focus isn't on me at all. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way I would approach that.
You could even do other stuff where you're not even in it. So, like every film that you've done, there's always going to be some guy with a pink umbrella or just something random like that. And that's another thing I thought about maybe doing in some of my film projects in the future.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. I like that whole pink umbrella thing. That's kind of interesting. Oh, actually, I do something like that. In every movie that I've made so far, the license plate on the car is always the same license plate, NFB 417, which is Marion Crane's license plate from Psycho.
Oh, cool.
All of my main characters share the same license plate as Marion Crane from Psycho. So that's something that I do.
They all drive different cars.
Yeah, they all drive different cars, but like it'll be, like if it's an Oregon plate or California or Nevada or whatever the plate is, it's always the same.
That's cool. So you said Halloween is probably one of your favorite horror movies, but let me ask you, what would be like a random horror movie that freaked the shit out of you as a little kid? And two-parter, does it still freak the shit out of you today?
What's so funny is I was in high school, I think I was about 15 years old, and the house we were living in, it had a basement, and my room was the entire finished basement. So basically, it was like living in an apartment under our house.
Yeah.
Every weekend, I'd go to Blockbuster. That's an old timey term now. I'd go to Blockbuster and I'd rent whatever movie jumped out at me on the cover, which is how I actually discovered Jeepers Creepers, which is still one of my favorite movies to this day. But it was a movie called White Noise. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
The Michael Keaton one, right?
I don't remember.
His like wife dies and he can hear through the computer, that one?
Through like speakers, and yeah, it's about like spirits talking through
Yeah, yeah.
and electronics and stuff. Anyway, I rented it and I went home, and I'm not somebody who, I guess maybe I've changed between now and high school, but back then I guess I thought ghosts were still creepy. And I popped the movie, and I don't even think I made it through like the first 10 minutes because the introduction was talking about how people on the other side can talk to you through speakers, or you can get a phone call from them, or whatever. And that just
Yeah.
freaked me out. I turned it off and I never watched it. And I think I was probably just about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I was in my late 20s. I was with somebody and I said, you know, I want to watch this movie again, but watch it with somebody and maybe watch it at this age now. And I watched the whole thing and I was like, what the hell was I scared of? Yeah, I mean that was kind of the only movie that really had any, and I think it's because like Supernatural, it's something that you can't see. So I
Yeah.
think that's what's like so scary about it. I typically, as a filmmaker now, I find what's on the other side of your front door is what's scary. Like in like the movie The Strangers, or
Uh-huh.
in Psycho, just taking a simple shower and being murdered. Or I look at the everyday life, to me, as more terrifying, random killers and things like that. So that's typically, my films will be set in what I like to call trouble in paradise. I tend to light everything very warm. Everything is well decorated. It kind of almost looks like it could be a Hallmark movie. And then basically the killer will show up and start wreaking havoc on things. So that's just kind of my preferred style.
Yeah.
When I first saw Jeepers Creepers when I was 12, I actually had a nightmare that I was walking through my godmother's house, which was kind of weird that that was the setting of the dream, but I guess that's how dreams are. And he was perched on her wine rack because she had like this wooden rack hung from the ceiling that all her wine glasses were on.
Uh-huh.
And in my dream, he was perched on that, and one of my friends was walking through the house with me, and he swooped down and grabbed my friend and flew off with him. As far as that goes, I mean, the only other nightmare I guess you could say I have is every once in a while I'll have a nightmare that has Michael Myers in it where he's chasing me, and I always wake up right before he catches me, which is pretty intense.
I feel like that wouldn't be a nightmare for you though, because you like the guy so much. You'd probably just be excited.
Just turn around and give him a hug.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, hey, I'll help you kill people if you let me. You can put on a Spock mask or something, because the Michael Myers is supposed to be.
William Shatner.
Yeah. Find an old shitty Spock mask and put that on. Michael and Kohl strike again. The movie that freaked me out, and it still holds up to this day. Have you seen this movie called The Gate? It came out in like 87.
I haven't.
Okay, you need to watch it because I vaguely remember it as a kid. It's like a kid and his friends, and this weird, like, alienish meteor thing strikes their backyard or lands in their backyard. And it basically opens like a portal to hell. And then there's all these like demons throughout the movie coming and like trying to kill him and attack him and everything. Freaked the shit out of me as a kid. I hadn't watched it for a very long time, and I recently watched it maybe a couple of years ago. Oh, let's see, I bet it's probably one of those cheesy movies. It's equally as trippy as when I first watched it as a kid.
Interesting.
I mean, it's an 80s movie, so the 80s, they were probably all
On drugs.
a good old assortment of drugs. Yes, I mean, it looks like a trippy movie even when you're sober. So I can't even imagine if you were like high and watching this thing. Just watch The Gate and you tell me if it's not a creepy ass movie.
Definitely check it out. I'm always looking for new horror films.
What are your plans moving forward? You want to do more movies, I assume, and stuff like that. Just tell me about what your plans are moving forward.
So moving forward, like I said, I have that feature that we shot in July
Yeah.
that we're editing now. I'm writing right now. I'm writing a film, a feature that is basically for the first like 20 or 30 minutes of the movie, you're gonna basically follow the character in real time
Okay.
as he moves through his world and get to hear his story and whatnot. And then I'm gonna kind of turn the whole movie on its head and kind of move it in a different direction. So that's kind of what I'm writing right now. That's just kind of what I'm doing now, and it's actually been kind of been fun to write because you get to hear his dialogue not only out of his mouth, but you get to hear his thoughts as well, which is kind of fun. I can't think of many horror films where you get a situation like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing now and moving forward, and eventually I'm sure we'll jump back into doing the podcast and whatnot.
Yeah, so go check out Thrillergram. Definitely keep your eyes out because I am going to be bringing you and Isaac in for a special podcast where we talk about Thrillergram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun talking.
Yeah, thank you, Kohl, for your time, and I can't wait to be talking to you soon.
All right, take care.
You too, man. And that's Dumb Talks. Thanks again for listening. Be sure to subscribe at the bottom for future episodes. Who knows? Maybe I'll be talking with you next.